All right, let's talk Miami Hurricanes. Listen, they got it done, and they got it done in a decisive manner, but obviously it wasn't pretty the entire game. But I think what they showed, and we're going to talk about it today, I think it's a great sign for the future of this Hurricanes program because we saw something from Cristobal and from this Hurricanes team that we haven't seen really since the early part of the season. And I think it's a great sign that kind of rekindled that fire, and they're going to be in a great position going forward. We'll get to all that in just 1 second. But first, I'm Nick, that is Andrew, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, the Hurricanes obviously came into this game against Stanford, must-win game. Of course, everyone knew that. And not only a must-win game, kind of a must-blowout win, if we're being totally honest, to get some of that mojo back. And after a quarter and a half, Stanford 7-0, not looking so good, tied at the half. There's a lot of concern, right? It was 7-7 after 30 minutes of football, and you're kind of like, what the heck is going on here for this Miami Hurricane squad? And then they figured it out. And they totally turned on the Jets and absolutely obliterated them and dominated them in the second half. But I want to focus on not on the production here. We'll get to the stats in just a second. And it was pretty impressive from a statistical perspective. But I want to talk about what happens between the ears on this Hurricane squad and about the culture and the psyche of this Miami team. This is a different year. This is a different group. How many times have we seen, certainly last year we saw it, where a team, listen, they had a tough loss or they barely escaped, and then they come out the next week, great opportunity to kind of right the wrong, and they still play kind of sloppy the entire game. We saw it all last year multiple times, and Cam Ward bailed them out. We've saw them a lot, really, the last 20 years for Miami, if we're being totally honest. And this was a game that kind of felt that way, right? Miami was playing not great. They weren't playing motivated. They weren't playing with a lot of energy. They weren't executing well through the first quarter plus. And they were in a dogfight, right? It was a 100% dogfight. Then what happened? Then it clicked mentally. And then we saw the maturity of this team step up, right? There's a lot of young guys. Obviously, Malachi Tony being this most prominent example of one, but there's a lot of very young, talented playmakers on this Hurricane squad. There's a lot of veteran guys, too. Coaching staff has been here a long time, relatively speaking. And they all stepped up. 18, 68, everyone in between, right? No matter what your age, no matter what your position, we saw the mental toughness and the maturity of this team show up as they absolutely dominated the Stanford Cardinal to get away with a much-needed 42-7 blowout victory. I always look for mental toughness once you get into October and November in college football. Listen, September's all about the stats and the flash and the breakout stars, right? And the surprising wins and some crazy upsets, right? That's usually how it goes. But once you get into the meat of the season, the second half of the year, where are the grown-ups? Where are the kids that have become men? Where are the coaches that can handle those kids as they try and become men? And we saw that with Miami. We said last week after the defeat, how are they going to bounce back? How are they going to handle adversity? And they handled a lot of adversity in that first half. They certainly did. A lot of it self-inflicted. Not going to deny that. But they handled it like grown-ups. They handled it like champions. And while they got a long way to go and a lot of things to clean up, this was a decisive moment, I believe, for this Miami Hurricane squad. Let's pull up the stats. Let's get into the numbers here. And you can see just how from an end-of-game perspective, how statistically dominant this was for Miami. In first downs, Miami 25-8, third down, fourth down, total yards 404, 144, passing, rushing across the board, total domination. So the game ended as everyone would have expected, right? In terms of Miami, time of possession across the board, just Miami just clearly better, which they left the game as everyone thought. Miami is 2-3 times better than Stanford, right? We all kind of expected that, and that's the way the game ended up. It didn't start that way. Right, it didn't feel that way through a quarter, even though I think a lot of the issues weren't, it wasn't like Miami was not physically better, or they just weren't playing good football. But by the game's end, it was clear Miami was significantly better, and it wasn't even close, which is what the Hurricanes needed to show. And every single one of the statistics bears that out. I mean, yards per pass, 3.4 for Stanford, 2.0 on the ground. I mean, you talk about defense dominating and stepping up. This is what Miami needed to see after what happened last week. Let's get into the individual performances here. I mean, Carson Beck wasn't anything special, but he managed the game very well, generally speaking. It wasn't perfect, of course. Didn't have to light up the stat sheet. You look at the receivers, right? Malachi Tony had 52 yards. It was a good game, but it wasn't anything crazy, right? I mean, their long receiving play was 32 yards, as you can see right there from Tony Johnson. So it's not like they big played Stanford. If you look at the rushing game, right, it was a lot of just methodical. 23 carries for $106, right? Overall, 44 for 199. It wasn't like they had 60, 70-yard touchdown runs, guys. It was just a lot of methodical, control the game, third downs, get points, and score. And that's what Miami showed, right? Sometimes in these games where a team is more talented than the other team, you get big play swings and stuff like that that can kind of flip the game back and forth, and a game can appear to be much more of a blowout than it really was, right? But what happened here with a tie game at 7 at the half, Miami came out and they just methodically executed. That's a sign of a grown-up team. You look at the elite NFL teams, in close games. They'll play, in the NFL, the competition is closer. College football is becoming much more like that with the transfer portal. You're going to have games. You're going to have moments where you're an 8-2 title contending team, an 8-2 Super Bowl team, and you play a 2-8 team, and it's tied at the half, 10-10 or whatever, right? But what do the mature NFL teams do? They slowly worm down. It becomes 17-10, 20-10, 27-10, 34-10. That's what we saw from Miami. We saw a mature team. We saw a team when it was time to, slowly, methodically, and deliberately bury the opposition. Despite adversity, they did do it. And that's the most important thing. That's a sign of a champion. Listen, everyone would have wanted you to go out there and go up 28-0 after the first quarter, 50-0 and a half, and roll to a 60-3 final. Yeah, that would have made everybody feel good. And it would have looked good for Miami. But what I saw from the Hurricanes Saturday evening, I think was better. We saw a grown-up team. We saw a mentally tough team. And I think that specifically makes them serious championship contenders this season. All right, Miles, I'm curious what your thoughts are on all of this. But first, Miami fans, in the comment section below, I want to hear from you guys. Give us your MVP from Saturday night's victory over the Stanford Cardinal. Obviously, a bunch of different directions you can go because, honestly, team effort across the board. But give us your MVP. You can only pick one guy. Put him in the comment section below. But, Miles, let me throw it over to you now. What are your thoughts on all things Miami?
Yeah, Nick, I think what you touched on early was key for me watching the team coming off, a tight win to FSU, a tight loss to Louisville. We see another tight game for Stanford, and you're thinking, how is this going to go? Is this going to be repeating somewhat of a trend here lately? Is this going to be a Miami team that's lost its spark, it's lost its luster going into the half? It's kind of the way that you think about this team, but it's like you said, no, it wasn't. They're able to turn this thing around and do some really big stuff as far as get these wins, get everything back on track. And I thought, like you said, Carson Beck, he's able to manage the game very well. Nothing too crazy from him, but didn't make any crucial mistakes. I think that was big going forward. Then I think one key thing for me is they're able to get the rushing game back on track. Mark Fletcher Jr. had been having a really good season up into this point. The last two games, kind of a lull for him as far as versus FSU. He only had 40 yards at 3.3 yards per carry on average. Then against Louisville, only 18 yards at 2.3 yards per carry on average. One touchdown between the two games. Really kind of wondering what is going on with the rushing game. Are they going to be able to get it back on track? And I think he stepped up in a big way this game. 23 carries, 106 yards, 4.6 yards per carry. Is able to get 3 touchdowns. That was huge for him as well. He was able to be used in the receiving game a little bit as well. He had 3 catches for 13 yards. So really big day for Fletcher, and I think that is part of the key of this Miami team, being able to do multiple things, being able to get multiple parts of this offense rolling. We saw the defense. The defense was dominant. You saw the statistics, the markers. They kept the first downs down. They kept the total yardage down. A domination of this team. But was the offense going to be able to click and get it back on track? I think undoubtedly they definitely did that. This is a Miami team I think is ready to bounce back. You had to have a game like this to bounce back where you had to wake yourself back up. Say, hey, we're in this thing. We're the better team. We need to prove it. Cristobal got this team ready to go. They're able to come out and dominate, quite frankly, against this Stanford team. I think this is a good performance. I think it shows well for them going down the stretch the rest of this season as far as ability to keep going. It's not too tough of a season for them to finish things out, and I think they're going to be ready for it. But this is a team needed a big win to keep everything on track for the college football playoff. They got it, and I think just this was a good win, a good wake-up call for this team to get them going, and now we're seeing the Miami team that we thought we were going to see in the second half of this game. Really great performance, and I think overall, if you look at how the game ended, you got to be happy with what they were able to do in this game.
Well, you're certainly happy, but the best part about a game like this from Miami's perspective was that there's still a lot of things to correct, right? They had 3 drives inside the Stanford 30 that netted a total of 0 points, right? So this could have easily been, right, a 59-7 or 56-7 kind of game, right? It definitely, based on the stats and watching the game, it was clear Miami was so physically better. So like, even though they won and got the job done there, and overcame the mental hurdles, which is critically important, like I talked about, it also has enough sort of corrective things that need to improve on to where you can't rest on your laurels, right? They had a long punt return that they got no points out of, missed field goal, right? Another fourth down opportunity they didn't take advantage of, right? So it was one of those moments where it could have easily been, it could have been over at half. It certainly could have been over by, halfway through the third quarter, but it wasn't. And how many times in prior years have we seen Miami play bad? It's a close game, and then it comes down to the wire against a bad team, or it's a close game into the fourth quarter, or it's 5 minutes to go and this game could go either way. The other team's still hanging around. This time Miami handled business, right? Slow start, a little sloppy. They found the way to make plays. Complementary football. Defense gets some turnovers, converted to touchdowns, right? Again, slow start, need to clean up. Mistakes, need to clean those up. But overall, the mental toughness and what the Hurricanes showed and what Cristobal has led on this team, I think is very important. I think will be a key part of their success going forward.